All right, I wanted to make a video today talking about why I think you should post to YouTube every day. Or if not YouTube, somewhere. If you're still on social media, do that. If you're just doing it on your own website, do that. But I want to talk about why I think you should post every day. Now, first of all, this right here is to protect my camera because it was raining like crazy before. But it's not raining now. You know what? Let me check if I got audio going on here. I do have audio going on. So, and now I'm probably out of focus because I lost my focus spot. Shit. Let me refocus. Yes, the challenges of manually focusing. Why do I think you should shoot every day? First of all, this is to protect the camera. And when I bought this, I didn't realize how big it was. Like, this thing is huge. I mean, this is for kind of a cinema camera where you have an external monitor and you have all kinds of stuff hanging off of it and side handles, and you can protect the whole thing. Like you can see, it's huge. So right now I'm shooting with a Panasonic GH5. Why am I using my GH5? And why am I shooting with a Mikey 35mm f1.4 lens? The reason I'm doing that is because it's been raining like crazy all day today, yet I wanted to get a video done because I'm trying to shoot every day. And it stopped raining for a little bit, but I'm afraid it's going to start raining again pretty soon. So I brought this out just in case I could just kind of hang it over the camera and keep the lens so that it's still available to the rest of the world. But in the meantime, I'm just going to hold it because it's not raining right now. I think you should shoot every day because have you ever heard of a book called The Artist's Way? I'm going to put a link in the description, but it's basically a book that gets you to write every day. To wake up in the morning and the first thing that you do is you start writing and you create, habits, you create your own creative practice every morning. You have this regimen that you stick to every single day. You start to get yourself in alignment with getting things done, with getting your mind right so that you can focus on what you want to accomplish every single day. And I think it's really important to do that. I also think that it's incredibly important to have like a daily diary, to know where you're at from day to day, to know, what you're thinking about, what matters to you, where you are in your life at this particular moment. I think it's of great value, especially as you move forward in your life. You could sometimes reflect back upon where you were at a particular time, like maybe you were going through a difficult relationship or something happened at your job, or who knows, maybe the President of the United States sent military to the streets on a peaceful protest. Like, I don't know, maybe you want to know where you were at when things of that nature were happening. And I just think, like, if you skip days, the thing about life is that you never know what's going to happen from day to day. You don't know where you're headed. You don't know what opportunities you're going to have or not have according to what's going on in the world. Like, imagine waking up and there's like a drone strike in your neighborhood, and suddenly all the buildings around you are gone and all the friends that your neighbors are dead, and you find yourself alive amidst all this chaos. Or, imagine people are starving around you, and this was a day that you heard that there was aid showing up with food and medical supplies, and suddenly you heard that they were like intercepted out in the middle of the sea because for some reason the powers that be didn't want you to have food or medical aid. So maybe you wanted to look back because you survived, and maybe you wanted to look back and see where your head was at that particular moment, and also maybe compare what's going on in the world now to what was happening on that day. I think it's of great value. I think also, when you're not around anymore, if you have this stuff documented and you put it someplace where it's available to the whole world, that people can learn from that in the future and maybe, realize that that's kind of like genocide or kind of like ethnic cleansing when you're not allowing people to eat or drink water, or have any kind of peace. That's something you could teach in the future, because I think anybody, any human being with a heart and a soul would look at that and go, wow, this is what happened 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Like, these people were inhumane. This is like sociopathic behavior. And they would get that from your video because you were shooting every day, talking about the events of the time, you know, like what was happening around you and how people were being affected, how your society was changing dramatically all of a sudden. Like, everything that you knew was suddenly changed, was suddenly different. I think it's incredibly powerful for you to go out there and document that kind of stuff every single day. You know, maybe you want to document what social media used to be like when you were doing it every single day, where, I don't know, something crazy, like whoever was like the head of your social media, like the boss, the CEO, the person who created it, for some reason, maybe they would say something nutty like, I don't know, we're not going to fact check anymore. Like, anybody could say anything and we're just going to let it go. You know, people could just post anything that would scare people or make you concerned or try to guide you or bias you in a certain kind of way, and we're not going to fact check it anymore because, you know, freedom. Like, you know, anybody should be able to say anything that they want to say at any time because, you know, that's freedom. Like, anybody should be able to go through a red light. Why not? You know, not stop at a stop sign. Who cares if a little kid's crossing the street just getting out of school and they see their mother across the street and they're like, oh, how was school today? Poof! And they get hit by a car because somebody decided, yo, I'm not stopping for a red light just because somebody told me to stop for a red light. You could document stuff like that, talk about that, maybe interview the woman who lost her child because of something like that, you know? Maybe interview a family that, you know, had some child picked up at elementary school because they were undocumented immigrants, but they were working and paying taxes, and their kid was at school and their kid was in Little League with other kids. And maybe you could interview somebody like that, and then people will look back on that and say, man, that ain't never happening again. We would never do that. Like, that's crazy. I mean, that's nutty. So I think it's really valuable and important to post every single day, you know? That, you know, maybe during a time that you were living in, people thought everything was so expensive, like so crazy, you know? And they voted for a new leader and he said, I'm going to bring all these prices down. This country is going to be so great again compared to what, you know, maybe you would interview people and say, well, great compared to what? Like, make it great again compared to what period of time when it was great? And why was it great? And why was it greater than it is now? And, you know, you could talk about the strides that your society has made up until that moment that you documented and compare it to times of the past. So you could interview elders, you could interview young people and see how they feel about it. You could interview people who've been through wars, you know, people who could never have imagined that things would happen again, that it happened to them 50 years earlier or 70 years earlier. I mean, that would be incredibly valuable, you know, to look back and go, oh my God, you kidding me? Like, because leaders of different countries, you're telling me leaders of different countries were arguing about politics and power and stuff like that, and so they were taxing each other on trade, and so all of a sudden cameras, like for example, a camera that cost $2,000 suddenly cost $3,500 or $6,000, or a lens that cost $6,000 was suddenly $10,000. Like, that would be cool to document. I mean, you know, obviously I'm just making all this up off the top of my head. This is all just, you know, fiction. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just creating this. I don't know, maybe these are bad examples, you know, but I just think if crazy stuff like that happened, it would be really cool to document that, to have something tangible that people can look back on and go, whoa, that's something to think about. Like, I don't know if I would like that, you know? So, I mean, for example, and this is a true story, like I read something recently about how, I think it was in 1946, and I'll put a link to this in my video, but in 1946 there were a bunch of veterans who had just come back to this country from World War II. And they noticed that there was a certain group of people who were going in and taking ballot boxes during elections, during the thing that we hold most precious in a democracy, right? The ability to vote, to participate in who our leaders are, who we want to represent us, to make decisions, to make choices about our lives, about the quality of our lives, about, you know, how we can function, about our opportunities, about our health, you know, about our safety, things of that nature. And these veterans noticed that somebody was going in and literally taking these ballot boxes, like stealing them, and also trying to stop people from voting and stuff like that. And so the veterans weren't having it, and they noticed that the government was not doing anything about it. So they went in there armed, and they went after these people. You know, I don't know, I'll leave the link. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's interesting that you can document something like that and go, that's chaos, that's anarchy, that's crazy. We don't ever want to get to that point. We don't ever want to get to a point where the people just have to rise up to, you know, save themselves because they have no option. You know, they're starving. They have no opportunity. They can't feed their children. They can't get any kind of medicine for their elders who are sick, or their child who has cancer. Or so what are they going to do? What are you going to do if your child is sick, or your mother's sick, or you can't get food for your family, or you can't put gas in your car so you can't get anywhere? There's nothing. You can't go to school. You can't study science. You can't study technology. You can't study religion or philosophy. You can't compare the differences in how different people from different cultures live and what they believe in, and how they how they function in a society and within the relationships with one another. Imagine if, you know, like, I don't know, something crazy like higher education was suddenly attacked, or journalism. I know this sounds crazy and ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous, but imagine if, like, journalists could no longer speak what they know to be fact. That suddenly we were living in a society where we question everything. Like, nothing can be proven because, you know, like somebody once said to me, this was actually my brother, once said to me, look, whatever you say, I could say something opposite, and it could be possibly true. Like, you can't dismiss anything that I say. Even if you prove it to me, even if you show me, like, scientifically that it's true, I could tell you that, you know, there's always an exception to the rule. Like, if you're living like that, where there's always an exception to the rule, like if you're walking around saying, look, I don't believe it, or I don't not believe it, you know, like, who knows, in this society, anything could happen, anything is possible, then yeah, it's interesting to document something like that, so that people could look back upon that and just go like, wow, that's crazy. That's just crazy. So I think that we should not let even one day go by, not one single day, because you know what? Tomorrow is promised to nobody. That's a fact. That's absolutely true. Nobody can argue with that. Like, somebody died today. As a matter of fact, hundreds of people, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people around the world died today. That is a fact. And so I think we should document with keeping that in mind. Like, you don't have any time to waste. You don't have a day to kill. You don't have, you know, you don't have the luxury of saying, you know what, I'll get to it tomorrow. Because you might not be here tomorrow. You might not be able to do what you do tomorrow. You might have restrictions on everything. You don't know. You have no idea. You know, you might not feel the same way tomorrow. You might not believe in the same things that you believe in today, tomorrow. Everything might change. You might see something that confuses you and makes you go, oh, damn, maybe not. You know, maybe something else. That might very well happen to you. You have no idea. So don't waste today. Don't waste this moment right now. Don't do it, because it's a wasted opportunity. And who out here can afford to waste a true, real, legitimate, tangible opportunity? Who can afford to do that? I can't do that. You can't do that. That's why I'm out here in the rain. That's why, like, I'm with somebody very important to me right now, taking time away from our time together, who I'm not going to see again for a long time, starting tomorrow. And yet, first of all, she recognized how important it is to do your work, to do what you got to do, to make a commitment, you know, and stick with it. And I recognize that as well, because that's the way I live. I'm all about never negotiating with myself and getting shit done. I might not be the greatest, the best, or whatever at what I do. I might be the greatest, the best at what I do. But one thing is for sure, I'm going to set myself up to make a schedule. I'm going to commit to that schedule, and I'm not going to let myself down. I'm not going to let anybody down who holds me accountable. The people who are waiting for me to post something on YouTube today. Now you kind of used to the fact that I'm doing this every day. So if I didn't do it today, you might be like, oh damn, he said he was going to do it every day. What's up with that? Or I hope he's okay. Or what happened? Or he's full of shit. Or you know, everybody does it. Or maybe you don't care because there's so much going on, and maybe I am like deluded with the fact that anybody is even thinking about me posting every day. Like, who cares? But I care, and this is my channel, and this is what I believe in, and so I think it is so important to post every day. And I also think you have a camera, you have a Panasonic S5, you have a Panasonic GH5 like I'm using right here. I got both. How lucky am I? I'm privileged. You got the new S1 Mark II, you don't, because it's not out yet unless Panasonic sent it to you. You got a GH7, you got a Blackmagic 6K Pro, you got an Arri Alexa, huh? You got a red camera, you got a Sony A6100, you got a Fujifilm X-H2S, you got a Canon R5C, like you got a Nikon Z6iii, whatever you have the opportunity to shoot something right now. What are you doing that's more important than this? You don't have a half hour of your time. You don't have an hour and a half in your day to shoot something and then just edit it. You don't have to make some crazy edit with all kinds of cuts. I'm not going to do that with this video because I got to get back inside, because I got things I got to do and things that I want to do today. But I had the time to do this, and you could do the same thing because you have the equipment, you have the gear, and you have the mind, you have the soul, the heart, you have everything needed to do something like this. So all I got to say is, I don't know, in my humble opinion, I think you should get up and go somewhere, or set up your camera right there where you're at. Set up your phone if you don't have a camera, whatever, anywhere from a phone to an Arri Alexa and everything in between. And I think you should do something like right now.